All right, for this video, we're going to practice using the boolean modifier again and use some old modifiers from the past. And what better way to practice this new modifier than trying to model the old Connect 4 game from days gone by, or maybe it's still current. Maybe you've played this. Hopefully you have. I would imagine most of you have. But look at all those little holes we have to punch out of this game board. So what a perfect time to be using the boolean modifier. To model this, in my opinion, we can leave the cube, start with it, and we can get this rectangular face of this game, the main piece. So I'm starting with my cube. I'm just going to scale it along the X direction, and I'm also going to scale it along the Z direction. And that's pretty much rectangular. That's really all I need. Now my game board is pretty skinny here, so mine is just a little bit too fat, so I'll just scale it along the Y direction as well, just to thin it out a bit. And there. Once you're happy with your main piece, we've got a bunch of holes to punch out. So just like we previously did a couple minutes ago, we can go in and we can add in a cylinder, and we can rotate this cylinder along the X-axis 90 degrees. So literally just press 90 on your keyboard. I think I've showed you that a few times. RX 90, enter. And we have our first hole. So I'm just going to scale it down, and maybe I'll put it right up in the corner there. I don't need to be perfect. I can adjust the scaling of these circles and the position later. They are not attached to my game piece. Remember, when you added that cylinder, make sure you're in object mode. These are two separate objects. We cannot have them be in the same object. All right, now that's a lot of holes to punch out of this board, and I really do not want to duplicate this cylinder a bunch of times. So I'm going to let Blender do that for me. So while having the cylinder selected, I'm going to add a modifier. And if I want to add, or if I want to generate a bunch of the same shape, we have used the array modifier before. And the question is, well, how many of these holes do we need? Let's go back and check. I believe we have 7 by 7. Oops. 7 by 6, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 7 across, 6 down. 7 columns, 6 rows. So since I'm already on default, the X-axis, I'm going to go 7 across, increasing my count property. And these holes are basically touching each other at one particular point. I need some space between them. So this factor X, I can just increase that until I'm happy with how far they're spaced out. Looking at my reference, this should do just fine. If I'm happy, I'm going to apply this array modifier. And now I have 7 cylinders in this object. But that was just one piece of the pie, because now I need to generate 6 rows down. So, who would have thought? Use the array modifier. And instead of generating these 7 holes in the X direction, I'm going to zero this out. And I want to generate in the Y direction. So if I put a big fat 1 in the Y property, you can see that my holes start to generate vertically. And I needed 6 of them, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there we go. Check if the spacing works for you. I'm quite satisfied with the spacing. And apply your modifier. And now we can add the final touches just to make sure that these holes fit in our game piece. So for example, my holes are just a bit too big, so maybe I will just increase the size of the game board. And I'll shrink it down. It looks like I had mine too fat, so maybe you didn't. There's not much on the outside of this game piece, right? You don't really want all this dead space hanging out like that. So I'm going to really tighten it up here. Now, we're getting familiar with Blender. We should be practicing good modeling techniques. It would be one thing to just move your holes and place them in a place where you think is centered with the back rectangle. But if you really want to be perfect, here's a quick little tip that you can use now and in the future. If you click on your holes, your cylinders, if you try to rotate it, you may notice that the rotation is taking place not in the middle of your object. For me, it's the bottom left corner. Oops. Right there, that little orange dot, that's your origin. So that's basically where Blender thinks the middle of your object is. Obviously, that's not the middle, that's the bottom left. So if I wanted to put that origin in the middle, all you have to do is go Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry. Now you've got your origin perfectly in the middle. And the reason we want to do that is because I'm willing to bet that your rectangle has its origin in the middle because we didn't really do any funny stuff with it. So if I wanted to perfectly overlap these and you haven't moved your 3D cursor yet, is you can go Shift S, Selection to Cursor. And what that's going to do is that's going to move your rectangle such that it's lined up perfectly in the middle with your world origin, your 3D cursor, that little icon right there. Now you may not notice it with the rectangle because it's probably all centered, but your circles might be not centered. So let's click the cylinders. Once again, Shift S, and then that top option there, Selection to Cursor. And now what you have is you have two separate meshes perfectly overlapping, perfectly aligned with each other. So there's no guesswork in, maybe you're slightly off-centered. All you have to do is Shift S, the top one. And it's perfectly geometrical. It's nice and no guesswork in here. All right, we're almost done with the new parts. We need to remove these holes out of this piece. This may be a good chance for you to pause the video and see if you can do it for yourself, or we just did it about 15 minutes ago. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the process. So I want to cut holes out of the rectangular piece. So I'm going to click the rectangular piece, add a boolean modifier. Don't change any of these. You should have difference by default. The only thing I have to do is select which object are going to be punched through my mesh and leave the holes. And that, of course, is the cylinder. So using the eyedropper, I click on the cylinder. It looks like nothing has happened, so I'm going to click the apply. Boom. It still looks like nothing has happened, but once you either move those cylinders or you delete them completely for we do not need them anymore, we have our board. Looking pretty cool. So now your job is to add some detail to here. Maybe before you go and do that, you're going to want to be in object mode, Control A, rotation and scale. This will make your life a little bit easier if you start to add some insets and stuff like that. And it's always good practice to do Control A, rotations and scale. Or you can just do all transforms. So to add some detail, I would recommend adding some loop cuts. So, you could change that middle thickness there to kind of look like two separate pieces. We've got these leg stands, which are pretty cool. Kind of like these, not triangular, but like rectangular bases, but three-sided rectangle. I don't know. I'm too tired. I don't know what kind of shape that is. Nevertheless, it's got some insets and stuff, some stuff to give it some cool little geometry, just some stuff to give it a little bit of texture, a little bit of geometry, a little bit of, cool stuff going in, like a little slit at the bottom there. And of course, some chips, some game pieces. And put some game pieces in there too. And that's a very quick thing if you know what you're doing. And if you don't find it a quick thing, then it's good practice and you should be doing it anyways. So at the end of the day, you should have something like this. Yeah. Pretty cool, pretty lifelike. Anyways, have fun with this one. It's a good one.